What, you still awake? Let me tell you a story. It's a ghost story. Listen up close. It all began with a priest kneeling in his church. A rough man walked in, the priest was fearing the worst. First he confesses, he lays his sins to rest. Then he asked the man for help, somebody had been possessed. The priest made excuses, couldn't do it himself. But then the man convinced him it was his duty to help. Feeling of unease, but he was caught and so he agreed. Tried to drive straight, he was shaking at the knees. Afraid he wound up dead, prayed to God to protect him. That's when the man said, drive beneath the intersection. We live beneath the city, it's in an encampment. On the old train tracks, you know, the ones that been abandoned. Safe on the ground, away from the fiends and the thefts. In the winter above ground, we'd be freezing to death. The priest wasn't sure, but didn't see another option. If the man wanted to hurt him by now, he couldn't stop him. This is the story of the priest and the possession. The priest and the possession. The priest and the possession. What he seen that night, it was burning to his mind. And the laughter always echoing, following behind. This is the story of the priest and the possession. The priest and the possession. The priest and the possession. What he seen that night, it was burning to his mind. And the laughter always echoing, following behind. We followed him for 40 minutes, deeper and deeper. Seen tents and tin houses, a town full of people beneath us. Kept his eyes ahead, we felt them watch his steps. Hundreds of them, hushed, all holding their breath. Entered the house, a man's side was tied to a bed. His eyes were red and he was bleeding from the side of his head. Shaking and twitching, he was foaming at the mouth. Growling like an animal, then moaning, let me out. The priest acted, commanded the demon to release him. But it just set his eyes upon him and began speaking. Full of sense of fear, this man is doomed for death. Now run from here, or you will soon be next. I laughed a terrible laugh, asked what did you expect. Bent the man's head back until his bone snapped through his neck. The priest was stood in shock, rooted in fear. Suddenly it was dark, all the lights in the room disappeared. This is the story of the priest and the possession. The priest and the possession. The priest and the possession. What he seen that night, it was burning to his mind. And the laughter always echoing, following behind. This is the story of the priest and the possession. The priest and the possession. The priest and the possession. What he seen that night, it was burning to his mind. The laughter always echoing, following behind. He rushed to leave, his only thought to escape. Can't help these people, leave them all to their fate. But they were crowded outside, all staring at him. Red eyes just like the man before, and they were laughing. A same soul laugh, low demonic and deep. He tried to run but vomited and fell to his feet, screaming to get away as they began to move towards him. Slowly, as if they weren't in control, something forced them. He found his feet, began running quick as he could. Soon he was lost in the tunnels, in the shit in the mud. The laughter followed him as he tried to find a way. Echoing through the tunnel, all he could do was cry and pray. Took a right, then a left, and finally seen the light. Free, the laughter fading, he was shaking in the deepest night. His foot on the gas till he got home and locked the door. Broke down in the shower, he dropped to the floor. What he seen that night, it was burning to his mind. The laughter always echoing, following behind. All night he heard it louder as he lay in his bed, till suddenly he realized it wasn't in his head. All night he heard it louder as he lay in his bed. Suddenly he realized it wasn't in his head. This is the story of the priest and the possession. The priest and the possession. The priest and the possession. What he seen that night, it was burning to his mind. The laughter always echoing, following behind. The priest and the possession. The priest and the possession. What he seen that night, it was burning to his mind. And the laughter always echoing, following behind. This is the story of the priest and the possession. The priest and the possession. The priest and the possession. What he seen that night, it was burning to his mind. And the laughter always echoing, following behind. This is the story of the priest and the possession.